So welcome to core area number 1. This area is about becoming your dog's geek, becoming your dog's expert, and it's made up of 3 small elements. Those elements are understanding how do they learn, how do dogs go through life, how do they make their decisions, and how do those decisions change long term. The second area is how do they feel, do dogs feel emotions, what emotions are they, and putting them into the context of a naughty but nice dog. And finally, understanding their personalities, because let's face it, naughty but nice dogs, they have personality.
Exactly.
So let's start with the first core element, which is how do they learn? Now, dogs go through life making choices, and they make those choices on a second-by-second basis.
And these choices can be, I mean, they're infinite, right? There is no limit to the choices that your dog sort of comes upon in day-to-day life.
Exactly. I mean, imagine this situation. Let's say your dog is in a sit. They have to decide, do I head forwards, head back? Do I head to the left, head to the right? Do I chase that squirrel over there? Do I go sniff that tree over there? You know, the options are endless, and naughty but nice dogs, as we've already alluded to, they're more creative in these decisions. And the decision that we want them to make might be stay in the sit, maintain the sit until released from the sit, which, you know, they've got to work through a lot of choices before they actually get to that one. So, choices can either be, every time they're made, every time a decision's made, they can either have a positive outcome or a negative outcome. Now that's where those words, reinforcement and punishment, come into it. They sound like scary words, they're really not, guys. What it means is choice is made. If it's a positive outcome, the behaviour, the choice is reinforced, and in turn, that choice will be made more in the future.
For example, maybe chasing a rabbit. Say your dog spots a rabbit, the dog sees the rabbit runs, the dog gets the chase. You know what, that's reinforced.
Absolutely. Or let's say jumping up on the kitchen counter. You know, when they find your tasty beef sandwich up there and they eat it, that choice has had an awesome positive outcome.
And it's likely to be repeated.
Exactly. Now, some choices, they might have a negative outcome. So let's say you're walking down the street with your dog and your dog decides to check out underneath a car, have a little look, have a little sniff under there. There's a cat under there and it gets scratched on the nose. That is a negative outcome. That choice is less likely to happen in the future. They're less likely to stick their head under that car again.
And these choices, they go on and on, right?
Absolutely.
They're happening all the time. And the big bit here for you guys is that they happen whether you kind of are aware of it or not. They're happening.
Exactly. Now, that's the point. We can either step into this framework of positive or negative things happening when they make choices, or we can just let it happen. We can just let it run. We could just release our dogs on the world.
And some dogs, the dogs that aren't these naughty but nice dogs, you actually really may never need to notice, right? Because these decisions kind of happen and life carries on, and nothing seems to be too much of trouble, I suppose.
Exactly.
But actually, for the dogs that we're talking about, the dogs that we know that you guys are interested in learning about, it is really important that you do step in.
And in stepping in, what we need to do is provide them with positive outcomes for the choices that we want to promote. So, you know, 4 feet on the floor in the kitchen, we want that choice to be made more in the future. So what do? We provide that choice with a positive outcome. Maybe we provide it with some food to the mouth, a game of chase.
And checking in when there's livestock around, so checking in with us rather than moving or going into chase. And that type of scenario, again, it's a choice that is worth reinforcing. And to do that, we need you to understand exactly what is reinforcement, I suppose, and how we move towards that step in our choices.
Exactly. So we like to look at dogs' brains as a big network or warren of tunnels. And those tunnels, they each represent a choice. So they move from one area of kind of thought to an area of movement. So the sit tunnel will be here sit cue, perform sit. The tunnel has been used. Now, when we reinforce tunnels, what we do is we make those tunnels more desirable. So we like to take this a step further and actually imagine them as proper tunnels that your dog's running down. And we can make them more desirable by, say, I don't know, making them less dark, making nice lighting, nice carpets.
Champagne on arrival.
Champagne on arrival, absolutely. These tunnels are going to be used more in the future.
Somewhere the dog wants to go rather than somewhere the dog is avoiding, yeah, and we want to make it an attractive choice, because if we make them attractive choices, the dogs actually choose to make good decisions rather than just avoiding certain situations, right?
Exactly. So the ideal scenario would be that all of the tunnels that we don't want our dogs to choose, say counter surfing, we don't want them to make that choice. We want those tunnels to be dark, dingy, not so nice, but the tunnel for 4 feet on the floor in the kitchen, or go lie on your bed while we're in the kitchen, we want that to be immaculately clean, bright, sparkling floors.
And so our dogs want to actually make these great decisions. That bed becomes, in your kitchen, a hotspot. It becomes a spot where every time you walk past it, they're going to get great reinforcement. And I hear you guys saying, do I want to reinforce every single time my dog's on a bed? This isn't going to be every single time. You'll move it on to varying when you reward them, and the dogs just think it's awesome. But also you have a dog that you can be proud of.
Absolutely, and the key point here is that every time you feed your dog for an awesome choice, you're enhancing that tunnel. You're paying the champagne on arrival guy his pay slip, and he stays in that tunnel so that your dog uses it more.
And even better, again, you're making their lives reinforcement rich. So you're not taking anything away, you're not adding aversive, you're not being, I suppose, ruining your relationship with your dog. You're making this reinforcement rich, you're making their lives enhanced, and you guys and your relationship will together it'll be brought onto a whole new level.
Absolutely. Now, from today onwards, we want all of your dogs to have a reinforcement rich life. What do we mean by this? Well, dogs like things. They do what they like.
Right? Dogs
Absolutely.
love to earn.
They love to earn, they will do the things that they like, whether we step in and use them as rewards or not. So really this is an awesome opportunity to be harnessing everything in the environment and using them as rewards.
For example, one of my dogs, she loves swimming. Blink is just a fish. So why not step in there and put us in the relationship? So every time she wants to swim, we put in a game. So she maybe does a behaviour and then she gets to swim. So you're stepping into that, I suppose, that pot of value, right?
Absolutely. And if you're in doubt about what your dog likes, so a lot of people come to us and say, oh, my dog won't be rewarded by anything, they don't like anything. They're always off sniffing, chasing rabbits.
All they want to do is hunt.
All they want to do is hunt. Well,
That's
your
the
dog
thing.
is screaming to you that that's what it wants to be rewarded with. So the naughty dogs actually are just highly rewarded by a lot of different things.
And the big thing here is that lots of trainers might call this dog untrainable, stubborn, difficult, you can't get near them. Yeah, they might be more difficult in the sense they're not susceptible to the same reinforcers that maybe the typical Labrador who likes his food is, or the typical collie who wants to chase his tug is, or his ball. But these dogs are absolutely trainable. You just have to work with the reinforcers that they're asking you to stop and notice.
Exactly. So that's environmental rewards. And then we have something that is innately rewarding to all dogs to a certain extent, and that is their food.
I mean, every dog is got to like food to a degree because it's here, right? Like, we can't exist without food.
No, and what we want you to do, rather than, we're not saying restrict your dog's food access, what we're saying is look at the daily allowance of food that goes in the food bowl each and every day as a pot of value, and you get to decide what choices you put that value into. So let's say your dog's not calm in the house. Well, you've got your bowl of food there and you're going to think to yourself, okay, I need to use 60% of this bowl of food to reward calm choices. Look at it as kind of your budget for employee payment, like their salary. And what you need to do is focus the salary based on your priorities for your dog.
And here's the interesting thing here. Lots and lots of my students, I'm a professional dog trainer, lots of my students, they come to me and they say things like, but he eats raw, or but he eats, you know what, it doesn't matter what he eats, you just need to look at it as a pot of value, and you can divide it and design it as you need to. You can play with that schedule as you want to, as to what suits your life and to what suits your student's life. I'm sure that Tom has this in his role.
Absolutely. So this is something, a reinforcement rich life is something that I employ employ with every behaviour case that I come across. As a professional veterinary behaviourist, I see cases on a daily basis where we need to be rewarding the good choices for that dog. We need to be rewarding nice choices. Maybe it's being calm in the house. Maybe it's not resource guarding. Maybe it's putting that value actually in being independent because they suffer from separation anxiety. Reinforcement-rich life applies to each and every dog. And in fact, it's not restriction, it's facilitation. They're going to do these things anyway. So all we're doing is saying, you did an awesome job, now go do that thing.
And the big thing here is whether, like Tom in his veterinary work or myself in my sort of dog training here, you've got the food to use. It's there every day. You don't have to use it every day, but you can choose to use it as often as you need to, really,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely. And that's from kind of a vet perspective of, we don't want your dogs to be obese, we don't want them to be obese, and yet we've got a lot of choices that we need to be rewarding in these naughty but nice dogs, so let's use their food. Now, the third point to reinforcement-rich life is that tired dogs don't make great choices. Tired, just like children,
Even tired adults some days. Yeah. So like we all make better decisions if our brains are in the right places. So your dogs need rest. So many of my students, or our students even, we have a great online community, and so many of our students, they do a lot with their dogs, and we have to say to them, you know what, guys, give them some downtime.
Yeah.
Like dogs spend, I mean, how many hours did we decide the other day? We were reading a paper and something like, I can't remember, it's 20 hours.
Yeah, it was something crazy, like 20 hours of the day would actually be spent sleeping anyway. And that's a really great exercise, a really great piece of homework for you guys, is to watch your dog over the next 24 hours and note the amount of time that they're sleeping or resting. This is the amount of time that we need to be kind of making sure that they're getting that rest on those days when they might be a little bit more hectic and they can't necessarily choose to rest.
And both Tom and I, we both have multiple dog households. That's also really important that you manage your rest time within a multiple dog household, because sometimes the multiple dog household doesn't want to rest, because when one dog's sleeping, the young dog's up, or when the young dog's sleeping, then the older dog's prodding them to play. You know what? Manage your multi-dog households to ensure that rest is happening, because rest is so important.
Absolutely. So that's how dogs learn. Looking at tunnels, looking at reinforcement, we now understand, we've now got this framework in which we can put all our dog training, it's like a new perspective that we can frame our dog training in. It's looking at the brain as a warren or network of tunnels, picking those tunnels out that we can enhance, and a reinforcement-rich life facilitates that, utilising all these natural rewards that our dogs really, really appreciate, and what used to be distractions, now they're rewards. So now we're going to move on to how do dogs feel.
Now, this is such a huge thing in terms of our naughty but nice dogs. I mean, arousal, that is one massive word.
Absolutely.
Isn't it? I mean, it's a hot word for the whole sort of sports circuit anyway. Arousal has come around in the last year as being one of the biggest words used in terms of your dog training. Not only using it as a way of this dog is too excitable, but actually knowing how to harness it and how to use it, because actually it can be a good thing.
It's something that we need in sport. It's something that we can't be without.
Right?
No.
But it's also, it can go to the point where it's not maybe so useful within our naughty but nice dog.
Now, what is arousal? Because it's a word that gets thrown around a lot, but actually when it comes to it, what is it? It's the amount of activation, the amount of intensity, the amount of wakefulness that the brain is experiencing. See, I like to look at it as like the brain lights up, and when it's low
Like
arousal,
a light bulb thing, right?
yeah,
Like,
exactly. It's not so bright when it's low arousal. You increase the arousal, more of that brain is activated, and the light gets brighter and brighter.
It's the icy fire moment, right?
That's
like,
it.
The dog goes into getting like fiery, and like we do need that. Yeah.
But equally, that light bulb gets brighter and brighter and brighter as the arousal goes up, and then it gets to a point where it blows. and no longer is it light. The brain is just non-functioning, and that is the point of over-arousal.
And this is the point when we get into our naughty but nice territory.
Absolutely.
Right.
When we see dogs that are wide-eyed, pupils dilated, not responding to cues, not responding to anything, or equally those dogs that are so over-aroused that in fact they're reacting to things in the environment that otherwise they would not be reacting to.
And this is when it gets quite dangerous, because we can get into the fearful, the anxious, the worried, it can turn into a whole new sort of game, I suppose.
Exactly.
And it's something that we want you guys to be super aware of, so that you're aware exactly what can take your dog into this territory, and also sort of noticing the triggers.
And we've got something really exciting to share with you, and that is just like for learning, we've got a framework for looking at how our dogs feel, looking at the situation and thinking, how must our dog be feeling now? So in terms of emotions are made up of an arousal level. That's the first component, that's the first building block of an emotion. Arousal level can be high or low. And then the second point is that it can either be positive or negative. So we might be in like the happy, positive land, or we might be in the scary, dark, depressing, anxious land. And if we look at the diagram now that you can all see, what we see here is that on the vertical axis, so on the vertical line, we've got high arousal at the top, low arousal at the bottom. And then on one side, we've got positive land, positive, happy, bright, exciting land. On the other side of it, we've got scary, negative, dark, depressing land.
And worryingly, our naughty but nice dogs can spend quite a lot of time in that scary land. And this is where we know you guys can make such a huge transformation.
Exactly. So if we were to look at a naughty but nice dog as being generally worried about something, so let's say something negative happens, a negative event happens, dog barks at him over there. Now let's add in some arousal. Let's say we're at an agility trial and it's all super exciting and highly arousing. Dog barks over there. We've moved from the anxiety, worry box up to the fear box, and the fear box is where we then get the fear responses. So the barking, lunging, biting, chasing, all of those behaviours come out of the fear box.
And suddenly that dog is labelled aggressive, difficult. Just so many people don't know necessarily just what's happened. Actually, the dog started by being anxious.
Yeah, exactly. And if we look on the flip side to that, what an awesome life it would be to be calm. So what is calmness based on this framework? It's low arousal, positive emotion.
For example, when I visit the vehicle and I'm at an agility trial, I might visit the vehicle and the dogs are sleeping. That would be a great place to see them, that they're not jumping around, lunging, barking, watching everything go by, that actually they're just in a calm place and they're able to get a little bit of shut eye and sort of just rest, or maybe have a chew, or something that isn't busy border collie behaviour or busy working spaniel behaviour. I want something that is calmness.
Exactly. And then what we aim to do, and what we do effectively, is add in that arousal. They're in the happy land, they're in the positive land, everything that is happening is good. We add in arousal, we go up to the excitement box. Excitement is what Lauren uses so effectively in her agility runs. You see the excitement, you see the positive energy, the positive arousal. And then what we aim is, after that finishes, that we just go back to calmness. The default is calmness, and we just gently go up to arousal to do the exciting activity, whether that's going for a walk in the park and doing an awesome recall, and then going home and being calm again, or loose lead walking calmly, or whether it's training session or actually competing.
And this allows our dogs, whether they be sporting dogs or whether they are dogs that need to walk in Hyde Park at daytime or wherever they are, this allows our dog to live a calm, happy life rather than one that is stressful. It allows them to come back to what is a level sort of playing field, right? They're not constantly in arousal, and this is a great place for our dogs to be.
And over the course of this DVD, what we're going to share with you is how to manipulate those arousal levels to bring them down and bring them up. And also keep your dogs in happy land, keep your dogs in positive land. That's an awesome, awesome place to be. So that's how do dogs feel. You're now armed with a framework to look at your dog in any one particular situation and know exactly what emotion is driving the behavior that they're exhibiting. And you also know that you know where you want them to be, you know the aim, you know the long-term goal. We want them on the positive side of the line, and we want mostly low arousal. Now we're going to move on to understanding the personality type of your dog. Personality type is something that is an emerging thing in dog training. It's something that isn't often spoken about, but actually is so crucial, and especially crucial for your naughty but nice dogs. So you guys are kind of getting a head start on everyone else in the dog training world, in that you're going to understand your dog's personality types better than anyone else.
So we love dogs, we are passionate about dogs, and we're passionate about making this transformation so that we can turn these naughty dogs into nice dogs. But actually, what in the first place turns these nice dogs into being naughty dogs?
So in order to really tackle that, we have to understand and discuss how those choices that we talked about in the first element of becoming your dog's geek, so the how do our dogs learn and approach life element, and how do those choices interact with the emotions that we've just talked about? So how do emotions affect choices? Well, let's take an example of fear, because that's something that drives a lot of naughty but nice dogs. Well, fear can affect choices significantly, because it really directs what happens, because they've got to cope with that fear. They've got to adopt a coping strategy for that situation to cope with this scary thing that's happening. And they can do a few things. They might decide to fight, so they might decide to lunge forward, they might decide to chase, bite, growl, bark. A really active coping strategy, we call them.
They might try to run away, to get away from the situation. We call this flight. Now, remember that in certain situations, they might not be able to practice this. Dog on a lead, dog on a head collar, dog on a harness.
Absolutely.
This is something that we have to consider.
Definitely. And the other thing that they might do is they might goof about. So, you know what? We've all seen those dogs that they...
one of those dogs too. I just know if anything happens, you're like, I'll just turn into a goof.
I'll just skip around. And we've all seen those dogs where they get a little bit worried, they start sniffing. They just start sniffing madly, and it looks like they're hunting, but actually that's the coping strategy that they have chosen to adopt in that situation. Or they might jump up at their owners and go all goofy and wiggly.
Yeah, looking for appeasement to a degree, right?
Exactly.
And you also will see dogs that freeze. Yeah,
Definitely.
I mean, that's another option that your dog may choose to play out.
And the final one, the one that we actually want, is actually just for them to carry on and not really acknowledge it. So that isn't a choice that's motivated by fear. That's the one that says to us, this dog is not scared. And it's something that it used to be thought that actually you want the dog to have an over-the-top, excitable reaction to things that could be scary, like say when you're socialising your puppies, and you want them to jump up and go crazy at the bearded man wearing a fluorescent jacket holding an umbrella.
We want to notice every child in the distance, but actually one of the most, we feel, forgotten sort of things is actually you just want a dog who carries on.
And I did a study in 2013 looking at what response dogs show when they first see something before 6 months of age, and what response do they then have to that later on in life. And actually the only response that was protective for them not developing any kind of fear, any kind of reactivity, was for them just to carry on and really ignore it. The over-the-top positive ones, where they were jumping up at the person or jumping towards the thing, where the owners thought that they might want to interact with it, they actually then developed reactivity later on, and so did those that adopted the more traditional perspective on a fear response, which would have been barking or growling or trying to run away.
So actually your dog doing nothing is something we want you to sort of get used to seeing and actually enjoy and celebrate a little bit more. Nothing is good.
Nothing is good. Now, this leads us on really nicely to the first personality trait that we really need to discuss. We could say that this is the most important, but we're going to say that for each one, just for you guys to be aware.
Everything's important.
And that is optimism and pessimism. So what is optimism and pessimism?
I mean, when you have optimists, we're both great optimists, right? And I will describe Blink, my working Cocker Spaniel. She is certainly an optimist. In fact, every working Cocker Spaniel I think I've met is pretty optimistic. They wake up, everything is good. They see something in the distance, it's all good. Everything's happy, everything's joyful. They don't necessarily over-respond to things, but they have a great outlook on how those things might play out.
Absolutely.
And they seem to be generally optimistic in their lives, in most situations.
And optimism is that response to new things happening, to strange things happening, and it being a positive response, not a negative response.
So seeing novelty, I don't know, we're going to Disneyland. You know what? When you see something like a huge Minnie Mouse, like what do they do about that? Because dogs, when they see like people dressed up as stuff, or another great example is someone with a backpack on, someone with a motorbike helmet, someone with a cap on. How does the dog respond to novelty? An optimist is cool.
Yeah, absolutely cool with that. A pessimist, they're likely to have a negative response, so they're likely to exhibit a fear response to that situation. The same goes for ambiguous situations. So a situation that they've experienced before, it's not new, but it's not quite the same. So it may be going over to a dog and interacting with that dog, and the other dog kind of freezes and goes all sluggish rather than a normal interaction between dogs. And then you see that the other dog then kind of aggresses towards the dog that's being all freezy and strange. And that's because that dog has responded negatively to an ambiguous situation. And I see this a lot in behaviour cases involving children and dogs, where the dog doesn't like is scared of a child. And you think, well, what's so strange about children? But let's think about this. The dog, up until a certain point in its life, has seen people walking around on two legs, being relatively sensible, and then it comes across a child.
Very unpredictable, very noisy.
Making strange noises, crawling around on the floor, kind of like a dog.
Like, stilted movement, so they don't move in the way that they're not predictable.
Rolling on their back, doing strange things. And this is kind of an ambiguous situation for the dog that beforehand had a really clear idea of how people behave. And they respond negatively to that when they're pessimists. So often naughty but nice dogs, they're pessimistic.
And they really, we're talking about confidence levels here as well, because our naughty but nice dogs many times we'll look at them and actually their confidence level isn't there so much, right? Now the good news is, I mean the best news really, is that you can change this for your dog.
Absolutely.
This is movable, this is changeable, this is something that you can work with.
So this is something that has been explored extensively in animal research in general. You know, it's been shown that there's characteristics of optimism and pessimism in anything from dogs to cats to fish to bumblebees. This is an inherent characteristic of animals because it's part of their survival. And what we found in our practical dog training is that actually over time, using the right methods, which we're going to share with you guys, you can shift your dog from the pessimistic end of the spectrum towards the optimistic end of the spectrum, and that's so exciting.
I mean, that is possibly the best gift you could ever give your dog, because you're going to enhance their confidence, you're going to enhance their mood, you're going to enhance their everyday.
Absolutely. And when research is coming out showing that there's such a high prevalence of behaviour problems in dogs, what drives these behaviour problems is pessimism. So my study from 2013 showed that up to 80% of dogs exhibit fear responses to some form of regularly occurring loud noise, whether it be the vacuum cleaner, fireworks, thunder. There's research from our good friend Dr. Emily Blackwell showing that up to 1/3 of dogs that are deemed normal, deemed to have no problem, actually have separation anxiety when you record them at home. All of these things make up this kind of naughty but nice dog population, and at the root of it is pessimism, which we can now change. So that was optimism and pessimism. It's massive, right? It's huge for naughty but nice dogs. Now the next personality trait that we're going to talk about is generalization. Now what is generalization?
Basically, is your dog able to learn something well in the home, maybe recall, and then can they take it out on sort of into the environment and do it everywhere there? Basically, is this learning taken everywhere with everything?
So why is generalization important? Why is this learning going everywhere and to everything so useful, and also why does it have negative side effects? Well, it's those trained behaviours, it's the recall. Can your dog recall everywhere and from everything? Can your dog take those focus behaviours like that lovely eye contact that you've trained on the road? These behaviours are so important for naughty but nice dogs, and equally This applies to experiencers too. So
the interesting thing here is some dogs are much quicker at it than others. So how quickly is your dog able to generalize? For myself in sports dogs training, it's really important that they can generalize, because I'm going to compete maybe one day in, I'm going to the Netherlands soon, or I might be maybe in the UK in a very wet field, or I might be in an indoor arena on sort of soft sand surface. I might then travel to somewhere else where there's turf surface. How quickly can my dog generalize those environments? But not only those environments, everything that goes within that environment, which can make the environment more or less complex from the dog's eye view.
Absolutely. And equally, good generalizers, which, you know, we need for sport, we need for those trained behaviors, but a good generalizer might get, I don't know, let's say attacked by a black and tan poodle. And the good generalizers, what they'll say is either, okay, I'm worried by all small dogs, or I'm worried by all black dogs, or I'm worried by all dogs if they're a really keen generalizer. The dogs that aren't so good at generalizing, they'll be like, I am scared of black and tan poodles in this particular park at this particular time of day. And you can see that maybe for naughty but nice dogs, the good generalizers actually become a problem. So, in terms of developing a keen generalizer, because this, you know what, we need to develop it because this applies to positive experiences as well. How great would it be for your dog to have one positive experience with one, I don't know, black Labrador, and all black Labradors are fine, all black dogs are fine. We need to develop this as a personality trait in our naughty but nice dogs, and we're going to talk to you about how to do that really soon. So the third exciting personality trait.
I mean, it's the best one, right?
Yeah, it's the most important, as well as the other two.
They're all the best one. So, arousal.
Absolutely. So, how easily aroused and easily under-aroused dogs are is an inherent characteristic of them. It's an inherent personality trait. So, let's say...
Can I give an example of Style? Because Style's a great example.
Definitely.
She's a dog who can instantly get excited, but then very, very quickly come right back down to normal.
Yeah.
She can sit at the side of the ring, she can watch all the dog's movements, she can watch them go over agility, she can watch them go through tunnels, she can watch them and she can remain sort of calm. And then you can put her on the start line and she can immediately go into, I mean, she's fast and she's fluid and she understands her behaviours. She's got a great ability to kick up the arousal and bring it into good excitement level, but also to bring it back down to great calmness. Now, that's what we want to increase in all of our dogs. Now, like we said with Style, some dogs have it inherently, and other dogs we work on it. And I'd like to think we did a bit of both with her, but I think most dogs, it needs to be worked on.
Absolutely. It needs both that on switch, so the upping the arousal, and that off switch, decreasing the arousal, need to be developed. Now, why is this important? Well, let's go back to the emotions scenario. Your dog's in worrying anxiety land. You add in some arousal, your dog gets really easily over-aroused by, say, a dog barking over there, and all of a sudden you've got a fear response. If that dog wasn't inherently very easily over-aroused, then it would have stayed in the anxiety worry stage and there would have been no fear response. So arousal is really, really important to be able to manipulate.
It's super important that you guys, like we said, you're your dog's experts, that you can work out those triggers, you can work out the arousal, you can work out all of the situations that your dog is in terms of being able to then adjust it accordingly.
Definitely. And what does it look like? Well, it can look like a lot of different things, which is why, as Lauren so rightly says, you have to be your dog's expert. So it can look like barking, growling, hiding, lunging, chasing, sniffing, biting on the lead, salivating, pupil dilation, all of these different things. And it varies from dog to dog. It can more or less look like any change in behaviour.
And I think that that's the key thing here, that you guys need to become aware of all of the changes in behaviour and then what you're going to do to be able to balance that back up again. And it's all about balance.
Absolutely. And the worrying thing is that over-arousal that can look like all those different things, anxiety can look like that as well. Fear can look like that as well. Frustration can look like that also. So having a dog that's always in over arousal because they're so easily flipped into it by all these different things going on in the environment means that we can't disentangle what emotion they're feeling necessarily. So it's a real balance between under arousal, over arousal, and being able to switch them on and switch them off. So you can kind of look at it like a seesaw, where on one side you've got over arousal, on the other side you've got under arousal, and how easily your dog is switched from one to the other is an inherent characteristic of their personality.
Basically, arousal is all about balance, right?
Absolutely.
It's all about balance, and if we get that seesaw wrong, then it's going to go the wrong way, and that sometimes the consequences can be pretty disastrous for our naughty but nice dogs. We need to guard this arousal, and we need to become very aware of it so that we know exactly when it is useful to us, but also when we need to change the scenario to manipulate that arousal.
Exactly. The next personality trait, again, pretty important, is
Very important.
The same kind of thing, really. Arousal, how easily they are over-aroused, how easily they are under-aroused. The same applies for frustration. So how easily is your dog frustrated? How good are they at tolerating frustration? Now, frustration is the emotion that comes about when something that your dog's expecting, let's say they're expecting you to give them a treat in a training session and you don't give them a treat that second, or you don't give them a treat at all. The emotion that ensues is frustration, and it's a really productive emotion in evolution. It's an emotion where this didn't happen, I need to work harder to get it. It's like those the lab rats in experiments where no longer every time when they press the button does a treat fall out of the treat dispenser, and they're like, come on, frustration ensues, and they're like, come on, come on, give me a treat, it's not happening. That is what I want you to have in your head when thinking about frustration.
Because frustration, at the end of the day, sometimes it can be usable, right? Like it can be usable, but you've got to work out exactly where the tolerance of it is and what the expectation of you and the dog is.
Exactly, and frustration doesn't just apply to training. It can be applied to other animals as well. So when your dog goes over to engage play with another dog in the park and that dog isn't interested, frustration ensues. And the behaviours that go with frustration are just the same as the arousal behaviours, the anxiety behaviours, the fear behaviours. They may well look like reactivity, and they are reactivity. And that's really serious. The same goes for those situations where your dog's used to you heading towards other dogs when they're on the lead to say hi because you want to chat with the owner, and then there's a dog over there that says, give me distance, don't come near me, and you carry on walking and your dog's like, well, usually we go over to say hello, what's going on?
So you might get that dog that bounces on the lead, the dog that grabs its lead and starts to like tug away, the dog that starts barking and yipping and sort of letting the other dogs know that it's there. Like you can see all of those behaviours ensue, but actually they all came through frustration and a lack of tolerance to it because of the expectation that that dog was going to get something it didn't have.
And in fact, the majority of my dog aggression cases, let's call them, as part of my behaviour consultancy, the root of them, the start of them, is the emotion of frustration rather than the emotion of fear. So, the next personality trait, flexibility. Now, this is a really big one.
I mean, and we're not talking about flexibility of your dog here, although that's cool too.
Yeah.
We're talking about how flexible your dog is in terms of, like, what type of learner do you have? Are they flexible in their responses, right?
Yeah, exactly. So do they, when they are presented with a situation, do they always respond in the same way? Let's say those dogs that walk into the kitchen, and as soon as they walk into the kitchen, they always check out what's on the counter. They don't respond differently in that situation. This applies to reactivity too. Do you have a dog that every time it sees another dog, they exhibit the same behaviour or response? That again is flexibility, and that again lacks flexibility, in the way that they respond to situations.
I mean, we want our dogs to be able to change their responses over time because of them being flexible learners, really.
We don't want them to be reactive. We don't want them to necessarily chase that squirrel as soon as they see it. We don't want them to immediately jump up onto the kitchen counter when we enter the kitchen. We need to develop flexibility before before even starting to train alternative responses.
And we want to change their responses. I mean, this is the whole point of our NBN dogs. We need to look at whether we can change these NBN dogs to allow them to be more flexible, because at the end of the day, the flexibility is going to make their life a lot more comfortable, but not just their lives, our lives, everybody else's lives. I mean, it's a whole circle of good stuff.
Absolutely. So this is going to be a huge goal for you guys, to develop a flexible learner. So the best news, guys, here, this is just the best news, is that personality, it's dynamic, it's fluid, it's changeable. We can actually develop characteristics within our dogs. And you know what, from a vet behaviour perspective, this is one of the missed aspects of a behaviour modification programme. You know, we can teach positive associations to our dogs all we want, all day long, but what we need to do is enhance their personality, because that is what they're equipped with when tackling new situations. So this is just massive. Now, the first we play games, we like to play games, and we use our games to develop personality, and the first area that we play games in is shaping.
Now, in our dogs' lives, games are a big part of what they do. So when we talked about our value pots, this is something that you could use your value pot for. So one of my dog's value pot sort of sessions that day might be shaping games. Now, from a dog training perspective, actually shaping is absolutely vital. It allows your dog to use their creativity. It allows your dog to work through frustration. It allows your dog to sort of work on the tolerance to frustration, but also allows you to read your dog, to observe your dog, and to become your dog's geek, in the sense that you can see exactly what they can work with and what they can't work with. Shaping allows you to see so many of those things we've already talked about. It allows you to see their flexibility. It allows you to see their optimism. It allows you to maneuver the session to allow your dog to gain more confidence, or it allows you to push through that confidence barrier, knowing that you're so close to building up more tolerance to any of the things that you need to sort of push on with. Shaping is vital. Shaping is, I mean, we just love it. I don't think you can do too much of it.
And I think for you guys where you need to build flexibility, shaping's the biggest element to this, because what we can do is play shaping games like, how many different behaviours can you shape involving a stool or a chair or a box? Get 4 in the box, 2 in the box, back feet in the box, pivoting around the box, nose target in the bottom of the box. This is flexibility. This is responding differently to exactly the same picture. And the second kind of core area of games are generalization games. Now, generalization games are big because, as we've discussed, we need our dogs to be good generalizers for both those learned behaviors and the positive associations that we're going to be developing all the time throughout this program. And a great example of a really basic generalization game is just making sure that all those behaviours that you're teaching your dog, you do take them on the road, you do take them to new environments, and you get the value in taking that learning into new environments.
I mean, a really basic one is, my dogs can recall in the house, but then can they recall when they're out and about everywhere? Or they can sit when they're in the house. Can they sit on cue when asked to sit in the face of lots of different distractions, or on a wet sort of surface? I mean, we're out on the grass this morning, and I asked one of my guys to sit, and they kind of looked at me for a second, went, okay, I got this. But it was a different, they had to think. It's a generalization game. It's a young dog. He's not aware of, this is new, right? It's raining. So you've just got to work through all different environments, all different habitats, and actually, is your dog able to be flexible in that generalization? And
that's the everywhere. And then in terms of the everything, this is where it gets really exciting, because say we could teach our dogs to put their front feet on a stool or on a box, and then we could say, okay, you know that behavior now. Can you put your front feet on a upside down bucket, on an upside down food bowl, which they've interacted with in a different way before by eating from it?
On something that moves, on something that's unstable, on something that, I don't know, what if I put my leg out, can you do it on that? But just explain for these guys, Tom, how is that useful to their dog that's reactive? I mean, that's hard to sort of come up with. How does that work? Like, why is that helping my reactive dog?
Absolutely. So we need to teach focus behaviours, we need to teach impulse control type behaviours, and we need those to be applied to different situations. Equally, this is that, black Labrador example. They have a positive interaction with a black Labrador. What we need them to do then is apply that positive interaction to all black dogs, all dogs, no matter the coat length, and that's exactly the same as them putting their front feet on a upside down food bowl after putting their front feet in a bucket. You know, it's exactly the same thing. They're applying their learning to a slightly different picture.
And then our third area of personality enhancement, and I think for me this is the most vital one, although again we continually say this, they're also vital, is on and off switch games. Now, on and off switch games, those are for life. Those allow our dogs to be settled, happy dogs in life, but they also allow them to have their downtime that we feel is so very important. You are allowed through these on-off switch games to teach great boundaries. So you allow your dog to learn the great boundaries, you allow the dog to learn exactly what is and what isn't sort of part of the game. So I think on and off switch games are again just so personality enhancing in the sense that you allow your dog, you give your dog the gift of understanding exactly where they can play.
Absolutely, and what these on and off switch games do as well is if we imagine the on and off switch as literally a switch, like a light switch, and you know sometimes light switches, they're really tough and you have to push really hard to get it to switch on, and then the same to switch off. By playing on and off switch games, what we're doing is we're loosening up that light switch. We're getting them to practice actually switching on and switching off. And over time, it just becomes easier and easier, which is exactly what we need them to do.
This is something that's well rehearsed. This is something that they get used to doing. And therefore, when we get into the competition arena, or when we get down to the difficult park situation, or when we get down walking past the naughty terrier that is our neighbour's dog, you know what? Those dogs are going to turn nice because they just know that these on-off switch games play a role. Okay, now this is when I walk loosely, and this is when I'm playing this game, and it just allows the whole of life to be so much easier.
Exactly. So this is personality enhancement. This is huge. This is equipping your naughty but nice dog with the nice personality to apply to situations, with the personality that is going to prepare them for all the different situations that the complex and often scary life